Welcome to the Native Plants Lunch and Learn. If that's what you're here for, you're in the right place. Click the right link. Brought to you by Sustain Dane and made possible by the Dane County Environmental Council and their grant programs. I'm Lorenza. I'm program manager at Sustain Dane. I'm here in our office, the Spark building, a starting block downtown today. And what I do at Sustain Dane is develop and facilitate our education programs like this one today. Like I said, if you missed it, please introduce yourself in the chat and where you're calling in from. We serve all of Dane County, and really anyone who wants to join is welcome. So it's nice to see where people are calling from. And because we have some folks that might be new to Sustain Dane, I'm gonna just share this little graphic. To briefly introduce you to our work. So our mission is to inspire, connect, and support people to accelerate sustainable actions for community well-being. And one of those sustainable actions would be native plantings. And we define sustainability as a healthy environment that supports equity and social well-being for everyone, which in turn supports a just economy. So that's our philosophy. And we have a number of programs that aim to achieve that goal and connect and inspire folks in the community around sustainability, including some upcoming programs that I'll just share with you before we get started here. We've got our award-winning Master Recycler program. I'm going to share some links for you in the chat. That goes over like the ins and outs of recycling, our local recycling system, and answers your recycling questions. And that's coming up on July 20th. And our quarterly sustainable breakfast series is also coming up on, that'll be July 26th. And we have it quarterly and they cover various sustainability topics, but this time we will be talking about reducing the energy burden in affordable rental housing. And we're meeting in person. It's back in person for the first time in a while. So yeah, that's July 26th. And then we also have later in the summer, our summer social, and that will be Saturday, August 13th. And you can come join us at the Old Brick Beer Garden from 4 to 7. We'll be hanging out, and it's also a fundraiser because a portion of proceeds from the beer garden goes to Sustain Dane. So yeah, join us there and we can hang out in person. So moving on to the main topic of native plants. Today, we're joined by native plant experts, Evan Nelson and Raluca Allen from Good Oak Ecological Services, Aaron Crane from White Pelican Nursery, and we're also joined by 2 representatives from recent successful native plantings from the Sustain Dane community. So one business represented by Emily King, she'll be talking about Emmy Roth and their recent native planting, and one municipality represented by Sayre Larson from the village of McFarland. So we'll hear a short presentation from each of these groups, and then we'll have time, hopefully a good chunk of time at the end for Q&A. So please submit your questions as they come up. Submit them in the Q&A box. It's the one in the bottom of your screen that has 2 chat boxes, not the single chat box. Things tend to get lost, questions tend to get lost in the chat, and they'll be more organized in that Q&A box. And then what else? Let's see. Yeah, I see in the chat, yeah, address your chats to everyone so we can all see who's all here. And yeah, and I hope we get a lot of good questions and get all your native plant questions answered. So first up, we've got Evan and Raluca from Good Oak Ecological Services to talk about their work and about native plants. Take it away.
All right, sounds good. Hey everyone, thank you all for coming to learn with us this afternoon. I'm Evan. I'm a project manager here at Good Oak.
And I'm Raluca. I'm also a project manager at Good Oak.
So I'm gonna.
We had a lot of actual plants that we're eager to show you guys back when we thought the meeting would be in person. So we have some slides instead today since that was impossible.
Is that sharing all right?
Yeah, it looks great.
Okay. All right. You want to take away why native plants?
Yeah, so this area in southern Wisconsin has been oak savanna in the past, and we have lost a lot of the native plant diversity through development in the past couple hundred years. And gardening with native plants is a good way to try to bring a little bit back of the old ecosystem. We work at Good Oak, we do small scale, like urban garden type settings, and also bigger, like prairie, savanna, woodland restorations. So at this day and age, where with habitat loss and loss of biodiversity and climate change, every little bit helps. So planting a few native plants in your yard on or your property or at your business definitely helps. Um, Native plants help with providing essential ecological functions that have been lost through our transition to just lawn. They provide essential pollinator habitat, which means not just beneficial insects, but birds, and then going up on the chain, mammals and other wildlife. Um, and also beauty. Native plants provide and add a lot of beauty to a landscape, and learning about the plants and having those enriches somebody's life and just your environment.
All right. So when looking at native plantings, diversity is key. So every one of our native plants has certain insects and pollinators that depend on them. So having a diversity of species that flower throughout the growing season is ensuring that you're always providing this pollinator benefit. Flowering from April through mid to late October is key, and always providing those resources for both resident pollinators and migrating pollinators.
Creating a wildlife habitat can happen in any places. In these photos, someone converted a little bit of their yard to native plants, and then just a median, a terrace garden in on the side of the sidewalk. Just having those plants attracts insects, attracts birds, and just provides habitat.
And then bringing native plants in on a larger scale too. So if you have a quarter acre or more of land, planting a native prairie is a great way to increase these pollinator benefits. Many different types of mixes are available. So if you prefer short stature mix or a tall stature mix, these can be custom tailored to fit your needs and your desires. And over time, you can help to decrease your maintenance expense and time you spend maintaining just by using these native plants.
Working with rain gardens especially in urban settings is a really good way to not only bring plant diversity in, plants that usually would not grow in your yard because of the specific conditions they require, which is extra moisture and extra water, but being able to capture all of the stormwater runoff also allows with infiltration of the water, filtering, cleaning that water before it gets into our lakes here in Madison. Our streets, all of the stormwater runoff drains straight into the lakes. So having that in between, that filtration method that rain gardens provide allows the water to be cleaned and get back into the groundwater system instead of just bringing all the pollutants into the lakes.
Another great use for our native plants is in erosion control. So typical turf grass only has roots maybe 4 to 6 inches into the ground, where our native plants have roots upwards of 6 feet into the soil surface. So as you can see in this picture, this is a pretty steep slope up on Swan Lake near Portage that had some pretty severe erosion issues before installing native plants, both flowers and grasses, to provide pollinator habitat and also soil stabilization. So really utilizing these native plants to their fullest potential can help with many of the problems that we face today.
And I know a lot of people talk about trees as you know, being useful for preventing erosion, but the herbaceous native plants, their root system is equally amazing, if not even more. You know, like their mass underground is just incredible, and a lot of the species live up to, you know, hundreds of years. They go dormant in the winter, so you think they're not there anymore, but their roots exist, and they keep growing, and they keep um, filtrating water and kind of improving our soil too.
Yeah, and there's many different uses for native plants outside of the traditional native plantings, native gardens, native prairies that we think of. Some alternative uses, as some might put it, are under solar arrays, in stormwater management areas, and even in traffic medians along our roadways. The biggest key here is just selecting the right plant for the space. Much as in your native plantings in your yard, selecting a plant that isn't going to grow too tall, isn't going to be too aggressive, is going to do well in the soil conditions, to the light conditions present. By monitoring all of these different conditions, you can choose the right species to fit your need. And with that, we don't want to take up too much of everyone's time, so we'd like to pass it on and hear from White Pelican about all the
Thanks
great
so
work that they're
much.
doing.
Yeah, thank you so much, Evan and Raluca. Beautiful photos. That's the best part about native plants. They're so beautiful. All right, so up next, yeah, we have Erin from White Pelican Nursery to talk about her work up there.
Well, hi, folks. Let's see if
you
I
wanna
can get
click-
my slide going here.
Yeah, click that one more time.
There we go.
Nice, looks great.
Great. Well, thanks for everybody for coming today. I'd like to talk a little bit about our farm, the other services that native plants provide, their versatility, how you can care for them, and how you can promote their use. So before we started our farm, both my husband and I worked in conservation. Jack here is seen in the bottom left-hand corner. Jack Sullivan is my husband, and he was the lead of the research program at the Department of Natural Resources. And I was the head of Natural Heritage Conservation. That was the program that managed rare plants and animals, the State Natural Areas Program, and the Citizen Sciences Program. And we started growing native plants to help restore our own property, and also to provide plants for the annual Endangered Resources fundraiser. And today, now that we're both retired from the DNR, we support restoration programs throughout the state. And one of the programs that we do with our customers is a match that's 1-to-1. So for every plant that one of our customers buys, we donate a plant to the conservation organization of their choice. And not only does that provide plant material to restoration projects, but it creates awareness for these different conservation programs. And it also is kind of a feeder system of new volunteers for those programs as well. And what you can see here on our slides is Greg Hall from DeForest is on the left-hand side, and that's Cindy Bertley from Sun Prairie. They've been great partners over the years and have collected a lot of plants from us. Another part of our mission is to help the public understand all of the services that native plants provide. In addition to being a source of food and cover for wildlife, native plants, when they're included in your vegetable garden or along ag fields, They attract pollinators for those crops themselves. They also attract predatory insects like ladybugs that feed on aphids and other pests that affect ornamental plants and vegetables. And many native plants also make excellent cut flowers. They have long vase life and fantastic fragrance. Native plants are hardy, they're easy to grow, and they preserve our heritage. Many of the native plants have fascinating histories in their use of food and medicinal properties. And planting them helps keep Wisconsin looking like Wisconsin. And because our native plants are adapted to Wisconsin's environment, it's usually quite easy to find plants that can thrive in almost any habitat. And they can provide a variety of, they can provide variety and beauty throughout the different seasons. These plants they're not fussy, they don't need a lot of maintenance, and they can easily be propagated and shared with friends. And while natural plantings are beautiful, you can also incorporate native plants in borders and more traditional garden design. And it'll still support the pollinators that you're interested in. The most important thing you can do for a native plant is to put it in the right spot to begin with. So light, moisture, and soil conditions are important, but they don't have to be perfect. And any responsible grower will be able to work with you to help you find the right plants for your conditions. And there's loads of information online that can help you choose plants by color, by the wildlife that you want to support, by the soil type, by the moisture conditions. There's just tons of information out there. Most growers will have a resources area on their website that's really helpful. And the Department of Natural Resources also maintains a list of Wisconsin native plant nurseries, as well as other supporting information. So if you just go to the DNR and type in native plants, you'll be able to access all of that. One of the other things you should do is put off your annual cleanup in your garden for the spring, and don't do it in the fall. Keep the seed heads on the plants because they're a good food source for birds. And also to collect. Many native plants are easily grown from the seed that you can collect yourself. Don't use herbicides that might just outright kill your native plants, or use pesticides, which may kill the insects that you're trying to attract in the first place. And native plants may be resilient, but even drought-tolerant plants need a little support when they're first planted. So no matter where you live or what you do for an occupation, you have a role in supporting native plants and wildlife by asking good questions. So for example, if you're holding an event or you're a restaurant owner that purchases floral arrangements, ask your florist if they use native plant material. And then in turn, they'll work with their flower farmers to grow more native plants. If you're a facility manager, an employee, or a tenant, ask your owner if they can start using native plants in their landscaping. Are your local schools, parks, and municipal buildings using native plants? And if you're buying plants yourself, are they being grown sustainably and locally? Ask your nursery where they're getting their plant material and if they're using pesticides. Large restoration projects are really important. They make a huge difference, but so are small residential, municipal, and commercial plantings. These small plantings provide much needed habitat and can serve as environmental corridors, and they can really make a difference. And so can you. Thank you.
Thank you, Erin. That was great. I'm going to click the red stop share button. Excellent. More beautiful pictures, even more. And I think we'll have some more in store. So up next, we'll hear from our two successful native plant projects that we've seen in the Sustained In community, starting with Emily from Emmy Roth.
Hey everyone, thanks for being here today. I'm Emily King. I'm the Sustainability Manager at Emmy Roth. I am first going to share a little bit about who we are. I know many of you I could see from the chat are from the Madison area, and we had somebody from Willie Street Co-op, so I'm sure that we have a certain amount of visibility here. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that and then about our native plants, the projects that we've had and the ones we have coming up. This is a subject matter that I personally find incredibly exciting and very interesting, and it's been an absolute pleasure to start to implement some of these practices at our facilities with the help of some of the people on this call. So first, who we are. Emmy Roth is a specialty cheese company. We have our original plant in Monroe, Wisconsin. I'll go over our other facilities soon. And what we do, we take European traditional varieties of cheese and we make them at scale. We keep all of the practices that are traditionally used, for instance, copper vats and spruce boards that we have imported from Switzerland to ensure that it is as close to those practices as possible. But one of the things that we also consider with our cheeses is that we have the terroir of Wisconsin, so they do have they have local flavor, literally. All of our facilities are within Wisconsin. As I mentioned, we have our more boutique facility in Monroe. We're able to create many different varieties there. It's a very nimble factory. In Platteville, that's where we take everything to scale. I tend to call it the cheese spaceship because it is a very modern facility, but we're still creating those wonderfully traditional cheeses there. And as you can see from the photo on the top right, we have a solar array, and we also have an anaerobic digester on site in Platteville. In Seymour, Wisconsin, we have a relatively newly acquired blue cheese facility. We recently won a couple of awards from the Gorgonzola that is created there. If you can get your hands on it, I do recommend. It's wonderful in the summer, especially for grilling or for some fruit salad even. And then we have a joint venture in Muscadet, Wisconsin with Meister Cheese Company, where we create some American varieties as well. I don't want to spend a ton of time on us, but I do want to just show you at Emmy Roth, we believe we make the world's best cheese here, and we want to make it in the world's best way. Through the triple bottom line method, people, planet, profit, we focus on each of these areas and have very ambitious goals, to benefit all of our stakeholders, and also because it's just the right thing for us to do. So we're focusing on employee development. We have a giving and caring committee that focuses on communities. And we're now doing some research and some supportive actions around sustainable dairy, and then caring for our planet. So this is really the inspiration for bringing native plants into our arena, into our scope. We're going to be, by 2027, reducing our emissions by 60%. Eventually net zero by 2050. And sooner is our hope and our plan. We're also moving to 100% recyclable packaging, decreasing the waste that we create by half, sending no waste to landfills is our goal in the next 3 years. And then reducing water use has been a huge boon for us and was really our first project. Our goal was 15% reduction. And we are at this point actually at a 55% water use reduction in the last couple of years. But one thing that we need to do, because it really takes all of us to be able to reach those goals, is to ensure that that there's visibility, that there's buy-in. And one of the ways that we do that is by having a sustainability day for Emmy Group. We are owned by Emmy Group, the largest milk processor in Switzerland. So it is a worldwide event. And we always host, some sort of giveaway or an action for all of our employees on that day to make sure that sustainability is staying top of mind. So this year, through Sustain Dane, I was linked up with Erin from White Pelican, and she and White Pelican made an unbelievably generous donation of native plants so that every single one of our 350 employees was able to have access to their own plant. And then we also did an installation in Platteville. We had 6 volunteers to come out. It was a beautiful day on June 3rd. And we have this trough on the lower right hand. That's actually an old implement for cheese making that we've repurposed for a planter. Now, we did have the intent of having another larger installation, but the dirt was so hard that even with a tiller that somebody brought in, we weren't able to get through. So this trough is also acting as its own little nursery right now, as those plants grow, before we can get back to that dirt when it's a little bit softer and we can put those in. And then I've also taken a few in myself as a nursery at my home to make sure that we're able to transplant those when the time comes. This picture is from the day, from the giveaway, that upper right-hand corner, that's in Seymour. Bottom right, this was, from the planting day with our volunteers. And I was actually in Platteville yesterday, and they're all looking incredibly great. They're starting, a few of them have bloomed. So very excited about that, and that they have a happy home while they wait for their final place. We also, to get the word out to the remainder of the company, we do have some remote employees, and just ensuring that everybody understands native plants and why they're important, and from a high level. I'm not a botanist. I am very passionate about it, but you've got the other experts on the call. So I took what I learned from Erin and White Pelican and these wonderful printouts that she provided to run an educational session during our town hall, which happened the following week, to tell people even more about native plants and why they're important. And then we also had information not only to announce the installs, but to share more about native plants and why they are so vital to our ecosystems. So big thank you here to White Pelican Farm and Erin. It was really a magical couple of days to see people get excited about this, to be reminded about how much we can do and the ownership we do have around the things, our homes, and for our own little corner of the ecosystem world, and that you have the power to make a difference. And seeing people watch these plants grow and to care for them, it's a great part of their workday. So it really did make such a positive impact. Moving forward, I'm excited to announce a new facility being constructed in Stoughton, Wisconsin. We'll be moving our corporate office there. Currently, we're in Fitchburg. We love Fitchburg. We love the Madison area. I live here. I don't plan on changing that anytime soon. But we also wanted to get back to our roots, to an agricultural community. So as we were looking at this site, we saw, it's right next to an active farm, and we realized we had an opportunity here. And so we hooked up with a landscape partner that was able to inspire us by proposing that the landscape is based on an oak savanna. So we're a little more out there than we are now. So we're hoping that this also provides a great area for pollinators you know, for birds and, you know, maybe deer, you know, anything that just reminds us every day that we are part of something larger. And we're also going to be installing a walking path that goes all the way around our facility so people can utilize that over their lunch hour or their breaks. And, you know, to bring them through this array, this is just a handful of the plants and trees that will be grown at this facility. And we're very excited to see this come to fruition and to watch it grow and mature. And, you know, it acts as that not only for our employees, but for anybody that visits us, that sustainability is always top of mind. And we think about it operationally and through everything we do. So finally, just a big thank you to Sustain Dane and to White Pelican for making that happen. It was a wonderful experience and provided a lot of happy moments for a lot of people. And Emmy Roth, our goal is to provide the best cheese moments for generations to come. And if you have any questions or are interested in you know, having a project like this go on at your business, and you have any questions, please let me know. Lorenza will be including recording and some contact information when she sends out the final video later today, I believe. So thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Emily. And yes, to answer that and to answer Jody's question in the Q&A, I will be providing contact info for the speakers, so you can connect with them. And all right, cool. Thank you for that great example of how sustainability can be really visible through native planting projects at a business, Emily. Up next, and our final speaker before we get to hopefully a good lively Q&A. I see your questions coming in the Q&A box. Keep them coming. But up next, we'll hear from Sayre from the village of McFarland about a project that they did in the past year. Hi, Sayre.
Hi, everybody. Let me fumble through sharing my screen.
You got it. It's the green arrow.
It's getting there. Okay, can everybody see the screen?
Yeah, do you want to click present so it's just the slides? Yeah, that's the right button, I think.
Of course, and it goes to my other screen. So we're just going to fumble through this one. Mine's short and sweet. So this one here is done at a village of McFarland Park. It was a mesic meadow planting. It was an Eagle Scout project. So here's the project area prior to the planting. And as you can see, not very aesthetically pleasing. We have water that actually, this is the drainage way through the park, through the lake. And it just not possible for turf. It floods sometimes, and we needed to do something different. Here's a view internally in the park. You can see where the water actually enters this area through here and then meanders its way. Sometimes high water gets up into these areas. So we did have an initial project area of almost 4,000 square feet. Here is just after the planting. The Scout raised funds and received plant donations that they got 2,000 plugs, and we expanded, usually do about 1 plug per square foot. So we expanded it to 1.5 square feet per plug to get to about 3,000 square feet. So almost the entire planting, the initial planting area. Plants were selected again, as you heard from everyone else, for site conditions and also height requirements. I put a limitation a little bit on the plants that I wanted to see in the park because we didn't want to impact the view of the lake that is provided through this park setting. So we focused on plants that were about in the 3 to 4 foot area. And there are some other ones there that'll get a little bit taller, 5, 6 feet. But again, getting that right plant in the right area and assisting the Scout with this project, as you can kind of see that there are different color flags in the project. You see these blue flags on the interior. This is going to be our a little bit wetter area most of the time. And then this other boundary, the boundary of the planting, and then between the blue flags, is a little bit drier area. So we had different species within those areas. Project goals for this, although it's still in its infancy, just planted this year, aesthetics, getting rid of that unsightly, unusable area, function, habitat, erosion control, and infiltration, which you've heard before. A little bit easier maintenance. We didn't want to bring our mowers down there getting stuck. Don't get me wrong, there's still maintenance with these plantings, so don't think that it is not a no maintenance. You do have to worry about invasive species coming in, taking over, and things like that. And then also annually, once this gets established, we will end up doing controlled burns out here to help with maintenance, but then also a lot of these species have evolved with fire, so they thrive on it. Education, although it's not an active site, meaning no one is there, we'll have education materials up there so people can educate themselves and see if they want to bring this home. Other opportunities include stewardship, as this project was. This is a great Eagle Scout project that was completed for us, and it also promotes volunteerism as well. And that's my presentation, short and sweet.
Thank you, Thayer. All right. If you want to stop sharing, and then everybody can come back to the main room.
I never remember where this
It's
stop share
a
is.
red, it's like in the top center of your screen, and it's a red X. Ooh, I can also
Oh.
do it for you, I think.
I think because I have so many monitors. There we go.
Yeah.
I have 4
All right.
monitors, so I have to find it on which monitor it's on.
Wow, what a setup. All right, well, thank you everyone for your presentations. And yeah, if everyone can turn their cameras back on, and we'll just have a panel conversation about native plants here. My first question is a fun little icebreaker. What is your favorite native plant, if you have one? And also, while answering that, what initially got you into working with native plants? Just so you can have a little more to say. But what's your favorite?
I guess we'll go first. My favorite native plant, it's not an herbaceous native plant, it's a bur oak. Our oaks support over 500 different species of pollinators in our area, and are kind of the keystone species of our area. So they are super important to the resulting ecosystem. And what got me into native plants was a day of seed collecting of side oats grama up on Glacial Ridge National Wildlife Refuge in northern Minnesota.
Nice. Thank you, Evan.
My favorite is not a single plant, but it's the spring ephemerals. It's the herbaceous plants that flower early in the spring, like April, when the trees haven't even leafed out yet, and they are very important for supporting any insects that either come back or and their hibernation, like those queen bumblebees. It's their primary food source. So it's species like bloodroot or trillium or Dutchman's breeches. The spring ephemerals, I would say, are my favorite. And what got me into this field is just a general interest in conservation and working with the land.
Nice. Thanks, Raluca. Erin, do you have a favorite?
Sure. Somewhat similar to the spring ephemerals is Virginia bluebells, because that's the first place we see the hummingbirds come, amongst the bluebells in the spring, which is always a lot of fun. And if I had got to choose a second one, it would be bottle gentian, just because they're such cool plants. They're just, and the idea that only bumblebees can get in there is pretty cool. And I got into native plants because my parents, back in the 60s, were organic gardeners in Milwaukee, of all places. And they spent a lot of time with us, walking us around what was a very small urban lot that was just chock full of any kind of plant you could possibly imagine. And they spent a lot of time with us explaining them and just saying how cool they were.
Lovely. Nice. Emily and Sarah, do either of you have favorites?
I do have a favorite. It might come a little bit out of a left field, but mine is milkweed for a couple of reasons. First, that it has a sense of nostalgia for me. It was quite common where I grew up, so it always reminds me of home. And I also found out last summer that they are delicious if you fry the flowers, and they taste oddly like popcorn. So for, yeah, maybe a couple of strange reasons, I do really enjoy that plant. But how I got into native plants was driving through downtown and seeing some signage in the medians in the roadways of Madison. And, you know, I saw that they were starting to replace some of the grass with native plants. And so I did some research as to why that was going on, and here we are.
Great. Yeah, I am so curious about edible native plants. Took a nature hike once, and they picked the naturalist that was taking us around picked columbine, and it tasted delicious. And I never thought, I know you're not supposed to eat it when you see it out in the wild, but if you grow it yourself, you can eat it, and it's delicious. All right, Sayer, do you have a favorite? Want to share with us?
Sure. They're all my favorite. I'm kind of as many of these people up here as well are kind of native plant junkies, and everything else is just garbage. So, but no, I like to shed light on some of the lesser, lesser visual plants. Little blue stem. It is an absolutely gorgeous grass that provides so much color throughout the year that, a lot of our grasses, they just don't get enough attention. But little blue stem goes from green to blue to purple to red to tan, all in here, and it's just amazing. How I got involved, definitely big into the outdoors throughout my entire youth. Education, my bachelor's is in wildlife ecology and management. But what really drove me was, creating wildlife habitat into, the whole philosophy, field of dreams. If you build it, they will come. And that just evolved more than my passion for wildlife. So I took that route instead. So, yeah.
Nice. Great. All right, so we've got some questions in the Q&A that I'd like to get to. First, from Jody, we have, are there any non-native lookalikes to be cautious of in the area? And I'll expand on that a little bit if someone wants to talk about what is a non-native plant? What are some differences? Are non-native plants invasive automatically, or what is the problem with non-natives or invasives? Kind of a lot of questions there, but Evan, would you like to?
Yeah, we can take this one from the start. So a non-native plant is a plant that didn't historically exist in our area. So if you can imagine thousands of years before we existed here, these plants and insects were in a co-evolving relationship, ever developing traits to benefit off of one another. So they have come to recognize these native plants and certain cues from these native plants as a source of food or reproduction. And our non-native plants are just a foreign substance to our local insects. They don't recognize them as food. They don't recognize them for any purpose other than just existing. So our native plants provide all those resources that I previously mentioned. And a few non-natives to look out for that look very similar to native plants. First off being Dame's Rocket. It's the pretty purple flower that everybody has seen in the ditch flowering over the past 2 to 3 weeks. And it looks a lot like our native phlox, but is a non-native invasive species that really dominates our woodlands and also prairie gardens and such. The biggest identifying characteristic is that Dame's Rocket has 4 petals, phlox has 5. Another thing to watch out for is cultivar native plants. So a lot of our native plants have been genetically bred to produce a certain characteristic. A few that come to mind are blue columbine. What else, Raluca? A lot of our echinacea species have really been bred to produce a certain characteristic that may not be recognized by our native pollinators. So although they are native plants, they have been genetically altered to a point where our native pollinators might not recognize them anymore and might not find them useful.
Yeah, and even if they do recognize them, they might not provide the food source that they need. That has often been bred out in the benefit of, you know, extra color or a different shape or form. So yeah, we would definitely advise when gardening with natives to avoid cultivars. And then regarding the question if all non-native plants are invasives, they're not all of them are invasives, but the ones that are really problematic. Species like garlic mustard or Dame's rocket or reed canary grass or buckthorn and honeysuckle, they are really good at competing and out competing every other plant. They did not form these relationships over time where, you know, they're being kept in check by either other plants or species of birds or insects. So, you know, nothing eats them. They're so they just spread. One problematic species that still kind of gets planted is the Norway maple. Um, when we started losing our elm trees, our elm street trees to the Dutch borer disease, Norway maples have been planted and they're just kind of going out of control and invading our wooded areas and shading everything out. So there's a lot to take in consideration when you think about what you're planting, and it's a pretty complex field. And there are some plants that are not strictly natives, but you know, with climate adaptations or just with where we're at this day and age, they're not considered problematic. And you know, if we had time, if we had like thousands of years, all those plants would balance themselves out and form relationships with the insects and the birds. But unfortunately, that's not the case. So companies like ours and, you know, other entities that work in conservation have to step in and kind of artificially reinforce the balance.
Yeah, we're gardeners of the planet. We've been charged with that because we, you know, live all over and have influenced it so much. Great answer, thank you. Erin, there's a question from Jeannie, and I think you can probably address it. How can she make sure there are no harmful herbicides or pesticides used to grow plants or seeds, and are organic plants best to purchase?
So, you know, first off, if you're trying to get native plants, I think it's great. Not every grower is going to be organic. The fact that they're even providing native plants is a step in the right direction. On the other hand, they're native plants. They evolved to live in this area, and so they don't need to be grown in a greenhouse. They don't need all of the extra nutrient and herbicides and pesticides in order to, if they're put in the right place, they're going to do well. They want to do well. And so they really don't need all those inputs. I can understand why large growers would go that direction, because they're trying to force things into a certain window when everybody wants their plants in the spring. So on the, if you're a small grower, so let me back up and say that there's also, if you don't want to go that route, there are lots of small growers that are it's kind of a movement like the small market gardeners are, the small organic market gardeners. There's also small nursery growers that they grow in the field, they wait for spring to come, and so you just have to be patient. So that's one portion of it. The other thing is if you are using pesticides and herbicides, you're knocking out the things that are going to take care of the, those predatory insects that can help you get rid of the aphids, you're knocking them out too. So a lot of this just has to do with patience. You see aphids coming in, if you have those companion plants that are attracting the other, the predatory insects, just things are going to balance out. Everything's not going to get wiped out. So I think the biggest thing that people can do is just be a little patient in terms of when they're going to buy their plants. And if they see a problem, just you kind of let nature take its course, because it's going to rate itself in the end 90% of the time.
Nice. Thank you. All right. So for Emily and Sayer, I know we have some other businesses and municipalities on this call that are probably curious about what exactly it took to get the volunteer effort together for you, Emily, and what kind of feedback did you hear after your planting happened, and Sarah as well, if you want to talk about more of the logistics of how you got your program together.
Sure, I can take that one first. So through our Giving and Caring Committee, we actually offer all of our employees 4 hours of VTO, volunteer time off, that they can take. And so our employees are able to utilize that in the way that they choose, whether that's to support, a local organization that they're passionate about. But then we also provide opportunities like this for them to be able to spend some time, in this case, beautifying where they work. And so it fortunately didn't take a whole lot to get our volunteers in place, because we have that culture. And so it was more of a simple request saying, hey, we've got this project going on. And, if you would like to be involved, please get in touch. And, I think we had 3 people right away. And then a few others joined throughout the day to get to our 6. And sometimes we actually, in this case, kind of have to put a cap on it, which also creates, I think, a little bit more interest, because we knew, well, I mean, for instance, I was like, well, I have 4 shovels. So I would like, 4 to 5 people to be able to help out with this. So I think that always helps, is to create, its own little economy in a way, that you have a limited number of spots. And the easier you can make it for people to get involved in projects like this, the better off you'll be.
Great. Thank you. Cool. Volunteer time off. I don't know if I've ever heard of that. That is such a great concept. Sayer, what about you? With how is working with the Eagle Scout group?
It was great. What I do is I just have a list of projects, basically a list of ongoing projects that anyone that wants to volunteer at any level can pick and choose, basically. And something could be such as an Eagle Scout project, where the Eagle Scout has to do the majority of the work, where they do the fundraising and do the actual physical labor. Otherwise, I do promote through our volunteer coordinator, through our village, either educational days or work days within our natural areas or within our parks that have native plantings. And we get a fair amount of volunteers. Sometimes it's give and take, but it's definitely always greatly appreciated. As with everyone knows who's in the hiring world right now, we are in a mass shortage of staffing. So.
Mm-hmm. All right, so to close out, we've got 5 minutes left. So I like this question. Where are places that you walk past in Dane County or in your life that you think, hey, that would be a great place for native plants? We've talked a little bit about the different spots that they can live, but I'm wondering what everybody thinks. Does it ever occur to you, like, this should be native plants right here?
we see it a lot of times when we walk through the commercial landscape. It's great to see Emmy Roth incorporating native plants into the landscape because there are so many commercial buildings in the Madison area, and so many of them have a sterile landscape, something that's not providing benefit. So that's an area that we see that could really benefit from a lot more native plants. A lot of places are doing a really good job. You know, City Madison is really working native plants into their median projects as much as they can. Many of our solar developers in the Madison area are incorporating native plants underneath their panels. But we still have a long way to go, but we're getting there.
Yeah, and we can all do our part, you know, if we own homes or even if we rent and, you know, the landlord allows it. It's needed. Every little bit of habitat is needed and it helps.
Great, thank you. Anyone else?
I would just agree, you know, there's so much commercial lawn out there that doesn't need to be commercial lawn. I mean, you don't have to go whole hog and rip everything out, but anything, like, I totally agree. They could cut back on a vast majority of it and make a huge difference.
And it doesn't have to be super big. We talk about in our water steward course that just a few plants, if you plant them in the right spot, like maybe a downspout garden or along the edge of your property, like we saw in some of the pictures that you were sharing, can help prevent runoff and also add that pollinator habitat and everything, all the other benefits. Yeah, so it doesn't have to be a huge rain garden to be impactful or a giant native garden. And also it doesn't have to be super manicured or super messy. It can be really manicured too. It doesn't have to be a prairie restored. There's lots of different ways to incorporate them into your own property. So I see, yeah, people in the chat, urban native plant gardens are gorgeous in Madison. Totally agree. Great way to end our session today. And yeah, I see there are some questions that we didn't get to, but I'll be putting contact info in the follow-up email, and feel free to reach out. Anything anyone wanted to add? Any of our panelists?
I've got one last thing because I forgot
Yeah.
to say it. So another reason that, you know, we wanted to share native plants as a project through our organization is that it means less maintenance on your own property. Our new facility in Stoughton is actually going to be no mow. So anything you can do from an organizational perspective, my 2 cents is that when you can relate that to impact that they have at home, that's also beneficial for them. It's just a really nice anchor for anything when you're trying to promote sustainable actions within your org.
Definitely. All right. Thanks, everyone.
Lorenza,
Oh, yeah.
I see a
Yes.
question that just popped up at the end, and it's from my point of view, it's kind of an important one. I love the fact that people get rid of lawn and bring in natives, but there's someone asked a question: where can the public look for policies on replanting medians and front yards to replace turf? So that is a very, very good question from my standpoint, because I deal with this at the municipal level. Most likely there are rules and regulations within your municipalities' ordinances. So please contact them, especially when it comes to replanting medians and or terraces. You do need to know that that is the municipal's property, not nothing you can just go and, even though you'd be doing good in replacing turf or making something more aesthetically pleasing, you need to get permission from municipalities to do that. A lot of times you will have to go through committees and boards for approval, but then also looking at your own property, your own yard, making sure that you stay within the ordinances that are provided. Like the Village of McFarland does have a ordinance specific to having your lawn in a native planting setting. You know, it's permissible, but there are also rules and regulations within that.
Yeah, definitely always check your local rules, ordinances, guidelines. The Diggers Hotline, don't dig without calling the Diggers Hotline. Raluca, did you have one final thought?
Yes, I specifically about Madison. The Medicine Engineering Department has a pretty good program where they coach you and even reimburse you or offer you grant money for installing rain gardens. So that'd be worth checking out if people are interested in doing that on their properties.
Yes, they've got a 1,000 rain garden goal, and yeah, there's a map. I'm not sure where they're at yet, but your property could be part of that. And I'll share a link to that in the follow-up as well. And also a link to some other resources like Plant Dane, a place where you can get native plants for maybe about a third of the cost or a half the cost of your average plants. And you can also apply to get them for free for certain community and school programs. So lots of
Even
links in the follow-up.
the UW Arboretum, visiting prairie enthusiast sites to just kind of get yourself familiar with what, you know, what the plants look like and what the ecosystem would be like is a first step too. And, you know, if you can't right away just plant, just learning about the plants is a really good first step.
Definitely. Definitely. Cool. Well, we'll sign off here and look out for that follow-up email. Thank you so much to our speakers, and thank you again to Dane County Environmental Council for their support this day. All right. Enjoy the rest of your day, everybody. Bye-bye.